Hey, y'all, welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas Podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ. This is the Tuesday, July 23rd, 2024 edition here on the Chase Thomas Podcast. We got a fun show for you guys today. We got the Tennessee Vols Sports Guys all back. Ethan Stone of Saturday Down South, he's back after a few months away. We got Jack Foster of Omaha Productions back as well. And of course, Rocky Top Insider's own Ryan Schumpert to round out the Tennessee Vols Sports Guys as we talk, you guessed it, all things Tennessee Vols. We talked about the Vols baseball roster and what it looks like post Major League Baseball draft and who's coming in post portal, and what the rotation might look like, what the infield's going to look like, left field. It's going to be talented, but a lot of position battles up for grabs here for Tony Vitello's crew as they look to defend their crown many months from now. We still got a ways to go. Football season hasn't even started, but that doesn't mean that it's not too early to start forecasting and thinking about what the defending champs are going to look like on the diamond in 2025. We also talk about the Vols football hot streak that the recruiting program is on, or that the Tennessee football program is on the recruiting front. Josh Heupel and company are on a heater right now, and it looks to continue on through the latter part here in July and then into August. So we talk about Christian Gass, 4-star linebacker, committing to Tennessee this week. We talk about who's on flip watch for Tennessee, a certain 4-star tight end who might be an orange. We'll see. At some point this week, perhaps. We've also got Shady Hayward's commitment coming up. We've got, of course, David Sanders next month, Faison Brandon in a few weeks. Like, there's going to be a lot popping up here for Tennessee, and we'll see how they all unfold for the orange and white. But just a fun time for Tennessee Vol fans once again here, as this looks to be potentially Josh Heupel's best class he's had at Tennessee thus far. So exciting times, and we'll see what unfolds here over the next couple weeks. But we talk all about that as well. We talk about the quarterback room with Nico, Jake Merklinger, and Gaston Moore. And then, of course, we do a little bit of Tennessee basketball as well. JP Estrella, year one season review as he goes into year two. Could he start over Felix Akpara, stuff like that? It's all interesting. So we talk about all of that on today's edition of the program. Little housekeeping as we do before each and every episode on this program. Don't forget, folks, you can watch this show. So if you're watching us on YouTube right now, thank you so much for checking us out on that. If you are, make sure you hit that thumbs up button and subscribe if you're not already, as we close in on 2,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel. Full episodes, clips, shorts, all that good stuff on the YouTube channel. So make sure you're locked in there if you prefer to watch it. But if you're listening via Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any other audio medium, that's awesome too. Make sure that you leave this show a 5-star rating and write us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or however you are listening. It helps other people find the show, and it helps this very show continue to grow. You can find us on chasethomaspodcast.com as well for more information about the show and what we've got cooking here, and more information about the show and what I'm doing here in Knoxville, Tennessee, covering the Vols and all things national sports as well. You can email us at chasethomaspodcast@gmail.com to get in touch with me. If you have any questions for the Tennessee Vols Sports Guys on next week's show, you can email us at that same email, and we'd be more than happy to answer them at chasethomaspodcast@gmail.com. All right, Uncle Darren, let's go.
The Chase Thomas Podcast. My nephew needs me to record. See, I already hate it. I hate it.
Just throwing it out there.
All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Tennessee Vols Sports Guys, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ. That first voice you heard, because it's been 3.5 years since he was last on this program, didn't remember, like, when we get started here, like, there's a recording button, and then we get going, and there's a time and place to have these kind of questions, and that Q&A before you hit that record button. But that's Ethan Stone of Saturday Down South. Ethan, good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing fantastic. We're all moved in, living the life in Maryville. I'm ready for sports to start. I'm watching Major League Baseball, which I never watched, and the NBA Summer League with passion. And we need football back.
We're very close. We are in the doldrums, and the Braves are falling apart. The whole Dumb and Dumber, our pets' heads are falling off. Ozzy Albies now out. Max Fried out. It's brutal.
Right.
Nico Horner is now out with decapitation. Ryan's unfortunate bobblehead that you can see on youtube.com/Chase Thomas Podcast. Woof. Tough break. No pun intended. But that guy right there is Ryan Schumpert of Rocky Top Insider. Ryan, good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm a little less eager for football to get started, but it's coming either way. Fall practice in 9 days.
Yeah, we're taking this on a Monday night. Yeah, we're almost there.
This brief little reprieve of July is coming to a quick end, but it'll be a lot of fun and ready to roll.
It will be. And Jack, you're more optimistic. You don't look at fall camp and the start of football time in Tennessee with angst and with hostility like Ryan seems to have, which as someone who covers the Tennessee football team, a little strange for Tennessee's favorite beat writer to not be looking forward to what should be a special season, but we all can't be the kind of haters that Ryan Schumpert of Rocky Top Insider is. Jack, good evening. How are you?
Yeah, I'm forever the optimist. I hold that crown, I hold that title very proudly on this podcast. I'm super stoked for football season, man. The games brought all the feels for college football coming up. And think about how well people are going to know college football rosters this year compared to years past.
I don't know. Like I'm still like I have Phil Steele's
game.
annual, and he's coming on the program on Friday. But and I have a bone to pick with Phil with some of this the Tennessee stuff. Like we gotta dive into this. I mean, I had a whole 13-minute rant on the pod last night where folks got to pick. You get the boldness. I'm just gonna go ahead and say it here at the top. I mean, we're right here at fall camp. I'll throw it to you guys here. I mean, I'm going to lose my mind if I see one more person talk up James Pierce and how excited and why they think Nico is going to be so dang good, that Tennessee's offensive line is one of the best in the SEC. Tennessee's defensive line is one of the best in the SEC. And Nico could be a Heisman finalist. If all three of those things are true, Tennessee is winning 10 plus games. That is a recipe for extreme success in this league. But we're still seeing Tennessee pop in at the 7th spot in the middle of the road. I just don't see that being possible. I don't see that situation panning out with where Tennessee's at. People need to jump on it. Everyone's terrified to throw their hat back in the Tennessee ring from 2022. And I was a lone wolf going 10-2 on this program. Ryan didn't think they make a bowl game, as many remember. It was 5-7. Ryan is what we called him.
No way.
That offseason. And it was weird because Ethan and I were like, that's a little harsh. And Ethan was right there at 8-4, 9-3. But Ryan was just not a year 2 Hendon Hooker guy. And it was one of those tough calls that Ryan Schumpert of Rocky Top Insider, again, Ryan Schumpert of Rocky Top Insider, just has to live with for a while. So,
I've said like 20 words on this podcast. I've just been
but your name has been
assaulted
said 20
with
times.
Lies twice.
Chase is making sure every listener knows your first and last name today.
Anti-media affiliate. I'll go back to the first.
I just want people to know who says the things that Ryan
the
Schumpert of Rocky Top Insider says on this program over the years.
I cannot wait for the games. I can wait for 35 days of fall camp of watching them practice and stretch for 15 minutes a day and having to act like we see something that matters. Wow. I actually did watch the 13-minute video you posted today on x.com. And I thought it was a good point. And I think to me, I would overwhelmingly agree with what you said. I mean, those are the 3 most important positions on the field: quarterback, offensive line, and defensive line. I would say that there can be my only objection is that there could be a little bit of middle ground where Tennessee's offensive line, sure, it looks good, but I don't think it's going to be one of the best in the SEC, and they're an injury or 2 away from being very, very shaky, including perhaps one of their best players who's been pretty injury prone in the past. And I think Nico can be really good or a huge upgrade at quarterback for what Tennessee had last year, or at least a sizable upgrade at quarterback from what Tennessee had last year. And he's like borderline all SEC and certainly not a Heisman finalist. So, I'm with you. Sitting here 8-9 days before fall camp starts, I think I'm going to pick Tennessee to go 10-2. I just like where they're at these positions that are good. But if you're looking for someone to argue with you, I think those would kind of be the points that I would make, and where there can be some middle ground where Tennessee can be good at these spots, maybe not great, and go 9-3, and not have a banner season that reminds everybody of 22.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I don't know. I guess it's a lot of people are hedging and just they're straddling the fence here with Tennessee because they're talking them up in a lot of ways, and then they're also like, but I just see 8-4, and I'm like, okay, you can't just spend 2 minutes talking about how much you love so many things about Tennessee and then being like, but I'm going to put them at 7-5, 8-4, 9-3 at the.
But is anyone doing
best.
that? That sounds Kirby-esque.
Yeah,
I mean, not 7-5. That's me. That's hey,
even
look,
8-4. I feel like anybody that's talking Tennessee up is and doing what you're saying, still saying 9-3, which I agree is kind of sitting on the fence and hedging your bets a little bit. I don't think many people who would.
It's a safe pick. Yeah, it's very safe. And I'm like, someone dive in, and you know what? Don't dive in. Let me be the lone wolf here again. I'm going 10-2, and I've already persuaded one person on this podcast, Ryan Schumpert, now following me to 10-2. He doesn't want that same mistake of 2022 and that just tough prediction that Ryan Schumpert of Rocky Top Insider made prior to that 2022 season. But it happens. It happens, as Ethan Stone remembers very clearly before the last season. Jack, are you about to say something?
So have y'all done official season predictions yet on this pod?
No, I was gonna wait on that one. Okay. I think that we should do that one a few more weeks down the line because we still have room to change our mind a little bit here and see how fall. I will say, I'm so excited about Jack and Ryan putting together the fall camp videos on YouTube with my favorite royalty-free sound effects that play in the background. It's a great way to start the morning. I have my morning cup of coffee, and I have the 13 minutes of those hilarious drills and everything else that I'm just very excited about. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's one of my favorite things is the Rocky Top Insider YouTube videos highlighting practices and stuff. It's great. It's a great way to start the day. Some people drink coffee. Some people, like myself, pop in the Rocky Top Insider YouTube channel to catch up on what's going on at fall camp.
Well, we can't take credit for the fabulous Rick Butler's music choice.
Oh, is it Rick?
Practice videos. Yes.
Okay, shout out to Rick Butler. Also from
shout out Rick.
So there you go.
Recently had a birthday.
Did he?
Right. Happy belated, Rick.
Well, we also talked about Rick. I mean,
Yeah.
Ryan and I last week, right? We were talking about Rick made some choices here in Omaha, and I don't want to say.
What about getting engaged on Saturday night?
It was Tennessee's time, and he kind of put the personal life ahead of the Tennessee baseball team and their road to Omaha. It was an interesting decision here because we always wonder about the priorities of the beat writers for Tennessee, and that was one that made me raise an eyebrow. Of I thought Vitello and the Oma balls came first, but not to Rick Butler, it seems.
No. Clearly not. Again, selfish is the word that comes to mind.
Oh man. Well, speaking of the Omaha baseball national champions, who will be the defending national champions going into next year, we have some positive news. It was kind of funny when you think about just how the draft. I was in Maui for the past week, and I'm over here refreshing the MLB draft and the time zone change, and I felt like a madman just being like, okay, who's going here, who's going to get picked up, and I think by all accounts, Ryan, I think you're the expert here, but this was a big win for Tennessee based on who ultimately got drafted, and we got the biggest news tonight of Anson. Is it Anson Seibart or Seibart? Seibart. He declines to join the Detroit Tigers and sign with them. So the number one player in Tennessee's class, pitcher, will be on campus. Tanner Coons, is that it? Is that how you pronounce his name? He's also going to be in.
I'm not positive on him.
Tegan Coons.
Tegan Coons. Excuse me. But there is a Tanner, right? There is a Tanner also in the mix. Is there a Tanner Wiggins?
I don't think of guys coming to campus.
No, Wiggins. There's a Jackson Walker. Tanner Wiggins. Is that the guy that pitched at Arkansas?
I don't know. I feel like there was a Tanner. Maybe not. Maybe it was a Tegan. I don't know. But either way,
well, the transfer, right? Tanner.
Yeah,
Franklin.
isn't there a transfer? Tennessee.
Yeah, Tanner Franklin. Yeah,
but
Tanner
not,
Franklin.
not-
Okay, I knew there
not
was a
someone
Tanner.
but
I
he
was like,
wasn't
I-
draft eligible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, either way, when you look at who Tennessee got in and how the draft ultimately unfolded for them, was this a big win for Tennessee as a whole? And what were your takeaways from the Major League Baseball draft from Tennessee's perspective, Ryan Schumpert?
I think when you look just at the high school signing class, it was a big win. I don't think everybody's officially signed yet, but looks like it's going to be 3 guys that they'll lose to professional baseball. And when you go in, I think it was 7 guys in the top 200, basically, in the draft prospects rankings, not necessarily mock drafts, but prospect rankings. And for only, that number to end up going, I think it's a pretty big win. And to get the two right-handed arms in Seibart and Coons, I think is massive win. So from a high school standpoint, I think it went really well to have a class that's, top 3 nationally and to only lose 3 guys to the draft. I think is really, really good. I think as a whole, I think the Radicek news, not that it's shocking, but certainly a loss. Certainly a guy Tennessee wanted to get in, and it felt a little more likely that he would get in compared to Ryan Galani last year from Wofford, or the kid from UConn, the pitcher who's already up in AAA. Reggie Crawford, yeah.
I forgot all about him.
And he's killing it. He's dominating in minor league baseball. Yeah, so that one felt a little more likely than those 2 guys that he would get in. But he obviously goes in the 17th round, ends up signing with the Marlins. It wasn't a shock once he got drafted. I mean, you're talking about a kid that's 23 years old and wants to play professional baseball. So you got your chance. You probably need to run with it. So that's a blow. But overall, I think definitely good. A good draft for Tennessee. I thought where guys that were on the current team that you already knew were going to leave was kind of a win. I thought Christian Moore and Blake Burke both going higher than where they were mocked made a lot of sense. It was kind of one where I'm not an MLB draft scout or an MLB scout, but felt like Christian Moore was a high first round pick, not a mid to late one. And Blake Burke sure as heck didn't seem like a early third round pick to me. So some of that stuff was really good. To have your 1 through 4 in the lineup all go on the first day of the draft, I think was pretty cool and a pretty good recruiting tool. So as a whole, all went pretty well. And from the draft standpoint, or from the high school draft standpoint, I think everything went really well for Tennessee.
What do you think, Jack?
Yeah, echo everything Ryan said. Seibart and Coons, big gets. One that didn't get drafted, Levi Clark, kid with a lot of power. Top-ranked offensive signee for Tennessee, catcher, first baseman. I mean, you talk about first base position, and Radicek, of course, getting drafted, signing. I know Dalton Bargo's there, but it's a guy who can compete there. And if you watch the videos, just look up his name on X. There's a couple, and dude rakes. So him coming to campus is a win. But of course, Seibart and Coons feel like the headliners of the storylines for freshmen as far as that goes. But yeah, where the current players went in the draft was huge. How many was it in the top 8 rounds? 8, right? 8 in the first 8 rounds.
8 in the first 8, yeah.
8 in the first 8. So that's great. And
that was it too, right? No one went after the 8th round.
Yeah, no one went after that.
Yeah, okay. Current players, right? And it just goes to show what Tony and Tennessee have been able to do the last couple of years.
And I do think one thing I'd just add to that, Jack, that is a good point from a position player standpoint. I mean, the 2 guys Tennessee does lose, Ty Salvacine, my Cubs took him in the 4th round, and then Trey Snyder. Both those guys like middle infielders, and Tennessee had, I think it was 4 middle infielders that were projected to go in the top 200. So that was a position Tennessee had a lot of depth at. And you lose a couple of those guys, but you got a lot of big names on campus at similar positions. So I think if you were pinpointing what guys to lose just from like a breakdown of this class and where you had strengths at, kind of the shortstop position is a spot you had a lot of strengths or a lot of depth. So losing a couple guys there, if you're going to lose somebody anywhere, is probably where you wanted it to be.
I am just I don't think we've ever seen this amount of young freshman arm talent coming onto campus at one time in the Tony Vitello era, right? Like when you look at just how much competition there's going to be in fall and going into the early part of next season, when we talk about like what the rotation is going to look like next year, man, like I don't think any spot is just locked down, right? Like, do we say any of the 3 weekend spots is a guarantee for anybody currently on like coming into next year?
No, I don't think a complete guarantee. But I don't think you really would ever say that if you're not returning any of your weekend starters, not at a school like Tennessee.
But I think in most years, like, it would just be kind of expected that Nate Snead just automatically slides in, or Dylan Loy's a year older. He would slide in at most schools based on what he did the previous year. But I think it's a little bit different. I mean, the AJ Russell factor, when does he come in? Like, that huge unknown there. I don't know. Like, how many freshmen does Frank and Tony feel comfortable trusting in the weekend rotation? Like, I don't know. I think that's really fascinating.
You're right about the Snead thing, because it would make sense for him to just automatically be one of the starters. But considering the freshman talent Tennessee has, what they've done in the portal, specifically Liam Doyle, if those guys really hit in the preseason and in fall camp and flash, then maybe Tennessee would have the luxury again to not have to start Nate Snead. I don't think that's going to happen. I do think Snead will be a weekend guy, but you're right in the fact that it's not 100% guarantee, because these other guys could pop and Snead could stay in his role. That could be a reality come next spring.
Yeah, and I would be really surprised if Liam Doyle's not a starter. I mean, I guess he's not just going to be handed that. He's going to have to go earn it. But to me,
Andrew Lindsay came in. He wasn't a guaranteed guy. He had to, things had to kind of go his way. Like, I don't think Tennessee is in the point where they're in a position of strength where they can just be like, look, man, best guys are best three. And that's what we're doing. Like, I'm just saying that Liam Doyle, just because he's a big time transfer and he started a lot of SEC games, I don't think there's going to be a Tony and Frank and everybody can come in. It's like, no, it's just best man up and whoever performs the best. And like, we're going to rotate, we're going to figure it out. But it's not like a guarantee. It's not like a, hey, when you come in, you've got a weekend spot is all I'm saying. It's like, I don't think Liam Doyle has got that locked down.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's not going to be handed the spot. He's going to have to go compete and earn it. But to me, it would be pretty shocking if he's not a weekend arm. He's healthy to start the season.
I would agree with that.
And
Snead the same way.
Snead wouldn't be a huge shock to me.
More surprising to me than shocking. And
I think Snead before the draft would have been surprising if he didn't make it in the weekend rotation. I think post draft and post portal, it would not. It would be. It's like a 50. Would you say 50-50 right now, Ryan? That he's a starter?
No,
somewhere around there.
I'd say over 50.
Okay,
like 60-40. We'll say that.
I mean, that only leaves one spot for a bunch of competition for the weekend. Like, that leaves one spot with a lot of talent.
Sure. And I don't think 60-40 is a lock either. And I don't think just these high school arms are good. I don't think any of them are. You look at them and you pencil any of them in. I mean, it's hard to start as a true freshman in the SEC. I think sometimes.
So who has in the Vitello era? Beam, Tidwell,
Beam and Burns.
And Tidwell. Burns. Did Tidwell not? I thought Tidwell did, right?
Tidwell did, yeah. Those
okay, so that's three.
Yeah. But I think Tennessee's a little bit of an anomaly on that front. Now, I think Tennessee is completely willing to. Like, they're probably more trusting in some of those freshmen. But I mean, I think it's very hard.
I like it. Who is the biggest campus get in your estimation, Ryan, of all the newcomers coming in post draft? Who's the biggest freshman that is going to end up making it to campus?
I think it's probably Seibart. Just because it's hard to see him not having a role. When you throw in the upper 90s and you're 6'8" and you were the highest rated commit or signing in the class, and you probably could have been drafted a lot earlier too if teams thought it was plausible that they were going to sign him. I mean, I think the Tigers just kind of threw a 16-round pick at him and see, all right, let's see if we can undersign some of these guys and throw a ton of money at him. Maybe we'll be able to get him. It didn't seem like he was ever going to. He was always going to go to Tennessee, and he's a 2-year draft eligible guy. So he's going to have to get to work building his draft case early on, I think, for it to truly be worth it for him. So he's the guy that I look at and say, I have a hard time seeing him not having a role. I don't know if that's a starter, but when you just look at the stuff that he has, to me, it seems like close to a lock. Maybe not a lock, but it would be surprising to me if he doesn't at least earn a role in the bullpen as a freshman.
Kuhn's same way, right? Draft eligible sophomore. Both these guys are 2-year guys.
How does that work? Can y'all explain this to me like I'm 5?
So they're old for their grade, basically.
But what is old? So what is the cutoff?
Because
like,
if you go to college, you can't go into the draft until you're 21. So most guys, it's 3 years because you'll be 21 after your junior season. No doubt about it. But for some people, like Dylan Dreiling, like Blade Tidwell, like these two guys, they'll already be
Dean
21.
Curley.
Dean Curley.
Oh, is Dean Curley that too?
Yeah, so this is the last year of Dean Curley, barring something crazy, barring an injury or something like that. But yeah, so it's just they're older for their grade.
That's tough.
Which is a big selling point too, in getting a lot of these kids to campus that have draft prospects as a high schooler. When it's you only got to be here for 2 years instead of 3 years. You come due to college experience,
Interesting.
build your draft stock, and you're really not losing that much time when it comes to starting your professional career.
But you see, I mean, the 3 years can be really nice. Blake Burke, Christian Moore, like the longer you're on Tennessee's campus, it hasn't really hurt a lot of guys. I would say.
No, Dylan Dryling's 2 years went pretty well. I would say
They went pretty well.
Really
it's really one. He didn't really
year.
play. I mean, he was a little bit in that first year, but yeah.
I mean, when you pop and you have your chance, you take it. That's just the reality.
Yeah. It's a lot to replace. I mean, and we'll put a bow on the baseball front here. So because Tennessee lost the Niagara transfer to the Miami Marlins in the late rounds of the draft, you mentioned him at the top of the show here, Levi Clark, Jack Foster. Is it him? Is it Stone Lawless? Is it Dalton Bargo, who's done well in the Cape? Like, the competition at first base now is wide open. And I think it's one of those where it would have been nice to have the transfer, and I think he probably would have been good, but it's not like Tennessee doesn't have options that could be really, really good in that spot too, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of options. I feel like I'd lean Bargo now just because he's the guy that's been at Tennessee, and Stone Lawless, of course, didn't play last year. Levi Clark's a true freshman, so you lean Bargo now just by default, I think. But there's a ton of options. I think, a couple of the other infielders Tennessee's got in the portal are pretty versatile, and anything can happen really with this loaded infield they got. Radicek kind of doesn't make the waters as muddy since he's gone, but they're still pretty muddy. And Bargo will be in the thick of it. Maybe Lawless and Clark, we'll see. But there's a lot of options for Tennessee, and an embarrassment of riches in the infield right now, which is kind of a little bit new for Tennessee, at least compared to last year.
Yeah, I'm excited. And I think it's one of those where Bargo, I think Ryan, you and I talked about it either last week or 2 weeks ago, when you're trying to forecast what the lineup's going to look like next year and who from this year's team figures to have an everyday spot locked in going next year. Bargo was still hard to figure out, like where Bargo is going to fit post portal. And now, like, he's maybe the biggest winner post draft for Tennessee. Like, I think that just first base opening up for him specifically, I think is huge for Bargo.
For sure. I mean, it is, but to me, it also isn't from the standpoint he was going to start somewhere.
But where was he going to start? Where was the obvious spot for him?
Left field, first base, third base of Andrew Fisher. They don't think he can play there. I mean, he can play all these spots, and he's going to be one of the best bats in the lineup. It's just a question of where.
Do you think Fisher?
Well, I'm pro Bargo on this program. Jack Foster and I have been long-term Bargo guys. They call us the Bargo boys around Knoxville, Tennessee. But you were about to say something, Jack.
No, I was just gonna. Is Fisher at first a possibility, Ryan? You think?
I'd be very surprised if it's a real possibility. I bet we'll see him out there for an inning or something in the fall. Heck, we saw Jordan Beck play a little bit of third base in the fall, but I don't think that's real. One other name I'll throw out at first base that no one said is Dean Curley. Dean Curley is capable of playing first base. He's played first base this summer for the USA Collegiate National Team. The first time Tony Vitello watched him, he played first base. He can play all four spots in the infield. And to me, that's, when you talk about, again, there's going to be just so much, going back to the whole start of the baseball conversation about the competition on the mound. There's going to be so much in the infield. There's so much versatility with so many of these guys that, that's certainly not an option I would rule out either.
Yeah, there's five guys, and it's just, how does it work out? I think like Lawless and Clark feels like it's not going to happen. That just would be my prediction. But as far as Bargo, Fisher, Curley, and Ariel, and then Killen, there's 5 guys, and 4 of those guys will probably be starting the infield.
See, I almost find it more fascinating or maybe not fascinating, but bigger question: who starts in left field if Dalton Bargo doesn't start in left field? If Dalton Bargo starts at first base, I do not know who the starting left fielder is at this point.
If Bargo's the first baseman and Fisher's the DH, who starts at left?
Yeah, or even if Fisher's at third and it's Curley and Killen in the middle.
Backus has an opportunity, right?
Yeah, Backus backups will for sure have opportunities. I think a couple of the newcomers will have opportunities, but there's just no clear proven guy there. Like I look at the infield and I see all the competition that they have, and I'm like, I can see how so many different guys start. The outfield, I mean, you can see how more guys start too, but to me, there's less like clear, concise guys that I have a ton of confidence in.
Well, it's only
I
one
see it.
position. I feel like Reese and Hunter are locks.
Yeah,
like,
I
would just go ahead and lock those in. Yeah.
I see what you're saying, Ryan, where it feels like Bargo starting in left and leaving the other guys to occupy the infield spots almost feels like you're maximizing potential there, especially offensively.
Yeah,
so at this
sure.
point right now, before fall camps even started on July 22nd, it feels like that's the reality.
Yeah, whether that be Ariel taking a step with his bat, or Stone Lawless or Levi Clark being able to play first base and being really good with their bats. I mean, there's a number of ways that happens. It just feels like there's more people in the infield. Look, you got the 4 starting infield spots outside of catcher, and I could see five, maybe 6 guys having real big years there. And in the outfield, if it's not Dalton Bargo in left field, I see 2 guys in center and right that I feel really good about in Hunter Inslee and Reese Chapman, but I'm not sure I see another person that's, again, on July 22nd that I'm like, yeah, I think they could have a huge year that would start in left field.
I mean, but we've seen guys take steps before, so
100%. We would have never guessed Hunter Inslee would have stepped into being a solid starting role 2 years ago.
I mean,
you
look at Colby's frame and how physical he is. 3rd year in the system. I mean, it could happen.
Sure. And he made major jumps from
it wouldn't shock me at all
Tennessee
if Colby figured it out and was good in left field for Tennessee next year. That wouldn't.
And
shock me.
he has a plus glove, and he's a heck of a base runner, great speed. He has all.
I think that's probably what you want if you're Tennessee, right?
checked.
Like that's the best case scenario to kind of if Colby just takes that job and runs with it this fall, going into next spring. I think that clears a lot of stuff up for the Tennessee. I think you feel really good at that point.
You don't have to worry about anything in the outfield defensively. Those guys can cover. The whole way.
Maybe Reese Chapman mentally locking it a little bit. That was a concern.
Yeah, but athletically he's a stud. Yeah. So
and I'm
also
sure
just more reps for Reese. That's the whole thing. It's like more reps. Like you just need more reps and right, and all that kind of stuff. But we shall see. We have a lot of time for figuring out who's going to play where. But it's a fun time. It's a good problem to have. Is so much talent that you're not really sure where guys are going to fit. But I think Tony Vitello and Frank Anderson and company are going to do just fine in that regard. On the recruiting front, Ethan Stone, Tennessee on flip watch for 4-star tight end Desan Bram out of Oregon, who that was something that seemed like it was trending for Tennessee, and then it kind of was a stunner that he ended up at Oregon to begin at the end of this recruitment. And then we're only a few weeks removed, and it seems like Oregon's going to be back to the drawing board on the tight end recruiting trail, because this is their only tight end they have in the class right now. And Tennessee's already got 4-star Jack Van Dorselaer, I think is how you pronounce it, out of Texas. How big of a flip is that for you if Tennessee's able to pull this off and get 2 4-star tight ends in this class here, Ethan Stone?
I mean, obviously it's big. I noticed the same thing that obviously you did. It's very strange kind of how Tennessee seems like they're right there for it the entire time, and then Oregon kind of comes out of nowhere, grabs him, and now he's looking like he's going to be, at least according to latest intel, that he's going to be committing to Tennessee. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you and say I know everything about this kid, but I know obviously having the dude, he's higher rated than Jack Van. I also don't know how you say it, Dorselaer. He's higher rated on that, and I mean, if Oregon right now, one of the better teams, obviously going into the Big Ten, is wanting him, then it's obviously a dude that's going to be able to compete at this level. I mean, it's Tennessee's trending towards a top 6, 7, 8, maybe even top 5 class as of right now. It's turning out to be one of Heupel's best, so it's going to be interesting to see how it keeps going along as the summer progresses. And obviously, these past few weeks, Tennessee's been getting a lot of guys. I know there's a couple dudes coming down the pipeline. That safety, Layward,
Shady Hayward.
Yeah, Hayward. He's going to be committing here soon. Obviously, Tennessee.
And we should also mention 2 new crystal balls for Jaden Perlotti on 247 Tom Loy & Company. So the current 4-star Georgia commit at linebacker. I mean, these were like if they're able to pull off Perlotti, and then I think they will still be in on at least one more linebacker because they need some. You always want some more depth, even if you're only playing 2 backers like Tennessee does throughout the year. I think after Peely's gone, you still would like a little bit more depth. Like I think you feel good about some guys, but I think Tennessee is not in a position where they can say no to 4-star blue chip talent at linebacker, even if they're not sure what the numbers look like going next year. I don't know. Like I think T. Lander is going to be a good player. Aaron Carter should be a great player this year, but you want to add some more depth in this cycle for sure. And like you said, Ethan, I mean, this is if Tennessee's able to pull off Brame from is it Bram or Brame? Do y'all know?
I have no idea.
I
I
would
never have
Great
any idea.
question. I
has
assume
an E at the
Brame,
end.
but I have no idea.
I'm just
Yeah.
reading, and it's one of those things that y'all like as an
Same.
avid reader, like you just read like things. And I remember Game of Thrones was like this, where I would hear it for the first time, like, "Oof, that's not how I pronounced it in my head when I was reading this book for 3.5 months. That is not what I had." That's what I just feel like when I read a lot of different recruiting guys and just not hearing it out loud because I don't watch the recruiting like stuff, so I'm only reading it and I'm just like, all right, here's my guess. So apologies if we're mispronouncing there, but I just look at it. It's kind of interesting that Tennessee is in a position to do this because Ethan Davis, it's a huge year for him. Tennessee really needs Ethan Davis to be a big time tight end for them. I like the number 0 tight end number change. I think it's good for a tight end. I think that I feel better about
Perfect.
Ethan Davis at 0. I think it's gonna be good for him, but they need that. Tennessee has relied on the portal here, and then the homegrown guy and Jacob Warren, who's been there for many years that Tennessee's been comfortable with, and that now they kind of like those guys are gone. Like McAllen Castle's obviously gone. Holden Staves will be on after this year. Like they need to start developing some in-house guys. And if you're able to get 2 super talented guys to go along with Ethan Davis going into next year, and not to mention Cole Harrison, who was a late addition here, we'll see what he looks like. But Carson Sneed, Kendry Harrison I think it's Kendry Harrison for the 2026 class. Tennessee's quietly like putting together. They can stack some 4 and 5-star tight ends in back-to-back classes here. And don't look now, Georgia fans, but many are saying tight end you at Tennessee, Ryan Schumpert.
Iowa still exists.
Who was the last tight end they put in the? Was it
Sam Laporta?
Sam Laporta, yeah.
Who
Okay,
just
Sam
had the
Laporta.
best rookie
Jason, you
season.
got me with
We're
that
gonna
one.
argue that one.
In the words of
come
Ryan Schumpert, you got me.
Allow me to be negative Nancy that Chase tries to portray me as. I'll start by saying Deshaun Brame, big time Job from Arrested Development vibes. I have made a huge mistake 2 weeks after committing to Oregon. It's
Great
like
reference.
he's definitely not going to Oregon. 2, I think from a recruiting standpoint, it's an incredibly impressive win, and he's an incredibly impressive looking prospect. I mean, you even just look besides Oregon, who's recruiting about as well as any program in the country. I think the other official visits he took were like Ole Miss, LSU, and I can't remember the other one, but another school that's recruiting really, really well. Now allow me to be negative Nancy. Tennessee doesn't throw the ball to tight ends. Sorry, I'll believe it when I see it. It's like Chase. I don't think it. More
if it's going to
sure.
change, if it's going to change, it's this year.
Maybe
With Stays and Ethan Davis, I feel like it's going to change. Those guys
and they might do it. They might do it more, but I just think fundamentally the offense that Josh Heupel runs is not predicated on throwing the balls to tight ends, and I just don't think it's going to ever be a real mainstay in their offense. Like certainly it is for Iowa or it is for Georgia. So it's great. It's good recruiting. It's impressive recruiting. You still want to get the best players at the position. But for me, a Shady Hayward commitment at a spot where Tennessee has not recruited well in the last couple of years moves the needle way, way more. Or Jaden Perlotti at a spot that Tennessee has recruited pretty well, but one of the more important positions at the field. To me, personally, that moves the needle a whole lot more than at a position, even a really good player at a position I just don't think is a huge priority in Tennessee's offense.
I agree with what you're saying, Ryan, and it's hard to completely buy into all this tight end hype on the recruiting trail because of what we've seen and the fact that they've only been used really as end zone targets. McAllen Castles and Princeton had a little bit of different roles, especially Fant, of course. He was Tennessee's Taysom Hill. But I think when you have better athletes, they can make differences in between the 20s. And maybe we'll see that this year with Stays and Davis. I think that what the tight end room probably has a lower floor this year because Warren was so stable and so consistent, and Castles was a seasoned guy, 5th, 6th year in college. But the upside of the room this year, and I think going forward, if they continue like this on their recruiting trail, is much higher and maybe can develop into a unique position for the Heupel offense.
Well, I don't know. It might be the Miles Kitselman conversation where it seems like he had a really good spring and summer. Like if he's solid, that's 3 guys. Tennessee didn't have 3 tight. Like that's someone who you got to keep an eye on, right?
Yeah, I mean,
I think it's.
Go ahead, Ryan. No, I was just gonna say I've seen where it's like obviously a possibility he could be the starting tight end day 1, but I just
Phil Steele has Kitselman is tight end 1 in the annual here from that just came out, the Phil Steele college football preview. Kitselman's tight end 1.
I think it's huge from a depth standpoint because Tennessee really has kind of gotten lucky at tight end the first 3 years of Heupel, where they've really had 2 playable guys all 3 years, and they just have never had an injury, and that's been very, very fortunate. So I think from that standpoint, it's big to have a good third option because it's obviously a very real possibility that somebody does get injured, and then you have someone who's a solid player having to play every snap in the game, or you're asking someone that's maybe not equipped to playing at a high level in the SEC having to fill in and play 40% of the snaps or something like that.
And we didn't mention Christian Gass, right? Like that's a huge win over Georgia. Like that was a take for Georgia, and you don't know what his position is here. Like Jaden Perlotti is a linebacker. Christian Gass might be an edge guy. It might be a middle linebacker. It really just depends on if he's done growing and what his size looks like and everything else. But that's a huge win. He's a top 100 player. He's what got Tennessee back in the top 10 and some recruiting sites here. He's a big get. Because Christian Gass, Brandon Inge, William Inge, when he came in here, he has a lot of experience with linebackers. I think he also was an Iowa guy, if I remember correctly. I think he played defensive line at Iowa. I think that was what position he played. Inge. I think he was an Iowa guy. But I just look at it. Tennessee is just they're stacking up in areas where it's kind of funny when you think about the linebacker room 2 years ago. For Tennessee with Jeremy Banks and Jawan Mitchell and just the options Tennessee had when Heupel first got here, to look at where it might be next year and the amount of blue chip talent that Tennessee has stocked that room with. Like you feel really good. I feel really good about Arian Carter. I feel really good about Jeremiah Thielander. I feel good about Jordan Burns. I feel good about Jalen Smith. I feel good about Perlotti and Gass if they're in here. Like you think about it, and obviously you're not going to keep everybody like Elijah Herring did just enter the portal and go to Memphis, but Tennessee is stacking a lot of talent at a position of need, very important position in this defense. And when you want to compete with Georgia, you want to compete with Alabama, you look at Alabama's 2 linebackers this year, they're going to be 2 of the best in the country. Like that's an important position from the best of the best in the conference and the best of the best nationally. And Tennessee is they're getting there. You can just see it with these last few classes that Tennessee is stacking, and they're retaining guys. Like that's the other part. Tennessee's done a really good job with roster retention. So when they're bringing in these blue chippers, it's taking a little bit, but going into year 4, Heupel and the staff deserves a lot of credit because I didn't think a top 5 class was going to happen, maybe potentially ever during this era. I just think it's just so hard to pull that off in the modern recruiting area and just certain limitations of just Tennessee in-state talent, this, that, and the other. But I look at it, if you land David Sanders and you can keep this run going with Shady Hayward, you flip Brame, like there is a path to Tennessee being right there. What would make it easier is if George McIntyre was still a 5-star at all these sites. Like I think that would be something, maybe he needs a big fall to change some stuff there a little bit. But Tennessee, I think right now, would we all agree that it would be kind of a surprise if Josh Heupel doesn't have his best class with this one? This is going to end up being his best class.
What was the one 2 years ago? What did it end up being ranked?
10th?
I remember 13 in there somewhere also.
I think last year's ended up 13.
Last year was the lowest, I think, of the last 3.
I think it probably ends up 8 to 10 is my guess as to where this class ends up.
But that's amazing. If you can get 8 to 10, that's great. That's because I think Tennessee, all they have to do, because fans who want the top 5 over and over again, that's not realistic. But Michigan just won a national title doing it the way that Tennessee's doing it, which is you've got to have like one of these 3 to 4 years have to break in the top 10. Like you need a top 7, top 6 class once, and then you need to be in that top 12, top 13 the other 3 to 4 years. And then you can really, and then do well in the portal. That's enough blue chip talent to really make a run if you have the right quarterback and you get old enough. Like that was a really old Michigan team that won it all last year. I think Ethan, I mean, it does look like Tennessee is they're inching closer. And I think part of it too has to be Tennessee's winning football games. Like Tennessee is not having to sell kids on here's what I want to do at Tennessee. You can look at it and you're like, the defensive line's playing really well. James Pierce is probably gonna be a top 5 pick. That's kind of easy now for Rodney Garner and chopping everybody to sell on the recruiting trail. If you come play defensive line at Tennessee, if you're Christian Gass and you want to play on the edge, whatever, you're gonna have success. You're gonna be pretty good. Here's what it looks like, and here's what you can be. And Keenan Peely has an opportunity to really thrive and become an NFL draft pick this year. You look at where Aaron Carter is going to be. I think there's just Tennessee is plugging a lot of holes. And I mean, right now, the final thing was corner and safety, Ryan, to your point, where Shady Hayward's an important get because those are guys we just haven't seen Tennessee land at this point. But if they start closing there too, Ethan, we're getting into a point where Tennessee's roster is going to be deep all across the board sooner rather than later.
Not to mention, there's that other corner, Onus. We talked
earlier about
names. I'm not going to get the corner out of
Onus K from
out of South Carolina, I think Columbia. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's him, and kind of going back to a little bit of what Ryan was saying, finishing around 8, 9, or 10. If you want to be in the 6, 7, 5 range, you got to get one of these 2 5-star offensive linemen. You got Josh Petty, you got David Sanders. If you get one of them, if you get both of them, I mean, you're absolutely sitting within the range where, I mean, think about this. Hayward on Saturday, I believe, is going to be committing. You could have Brame. You could have, I mean, there's just, is Jamie French still out there as well? I'm not 100% sure.
I think they're done. Travis Smith going in, I think that's over. Yeah.
I wasn't 100% sure where they were on that. But I mean, it feels like with the recent momentum that they've had, that it's just going to keep going. Like, I don't feel like it's going to be stopping anytime soon. So that's exciting. And to your point, Chase, you say that it's because the team keeps winning. I mean, the offense has just gotten more fun. There was questions about whether or not the offensive line would be able to keep in line, I guess, with just how fast Tennessee's offense is going, the tempo that they go with. And I mean, as we've said this podcast, that I mean, Tennessee's going to have a top offensive line in the SEC this year. So you've seen that improvement, you've seen that progression going into Heupel's 4th year. As we move forward, especially if Iamaleava and the offense just, explode like they're supposed to, and Tennessee goes 10-2, 11-1, it's just going to keep compounding on top of that.
One thing I would add, when to your Michigan comparison, I think what becomes hard with that is it's going to be a lot harder to get old to the extent that Michigan did without the COVID years. I mean, Michigan, they had 35 seniors last year or something to that extent. That's not going to happen now. And JJ McCarthy was a good player. Probably better than good. I don't know. I didn't watch a ton of Michigan football games last year. I don't mean to be disrespectful, but quarterback's the equalizer. I've probably said it on here a million times, and you feel confident that Tennessee is going to have good, consistent quarterback play with Josh Heupel, and sometimes elite. So I think from that standpoint, if you can be around the top 10 and right inside the top 10 pretty consistently, maybe more than 1 out of every 3 or 4, maybe 2 out of every 4, I think Tennessee does set themselves up to be in a good spot. And then, you say the defensive backs. Now, I continue to think I may be higher on the corners, at least the long-term potential of Tennessee's corners than most are. I like the talent there. I think they've recruited there, not great, but a whole lot better than they have at safety. And again, I don't know. I like Ricky Gibson. I like Jermon McCoy. And you talk about those guys being true sophomores this year. I don't know how good it looks this year, but I do think they're more talented than what Tennessee's had the last couple of years, or really Heupel's whole tenure. And obviously just being their sophomore seasons, I think that's going to be something Tennessee can build off moving forward.
I wish we got Gabe Judy-Lawley for one more year. He was really solid, and I understand you can't have Kamal, and I think the more top end talent with Ricky and Dermott is gonna be fine. But I think we'll see what Jalen McMurray is. But Gabe Judy-Lawley was quietly very, very good for Tennessee down the stretch. Him and Kamal really settled in across from one another, and it would have been nice to get one more. I would have loved one more year of Gabe in this defense. I think that kind of to see where they're gonna end up getting. But I mean, Jordan Matthews too, 4-star, who was a big time get for Willie Martinez a couple of years ago. He's sitting there at the 4 spot in the depth chart, but he came in higher rated than anybody else in that cornerback room. So still possibilities for him for things to click going into this year. Switching gears here a little bit, position outlook spotlight as you can continue on this series. Jack Foster, quarterback. What do you like most about the room? How will it evolve this season versus what we saw last year? Obviously, some new faces coming into the room, and Jake Merklinger. Biggest question mark, though, that you have with the quarterback room at Tennessee in 2024 as well?
I really like that guy who wears number 8. I think he's going to be a big part of that room. Blanking on his name. Nico Iamaleava. Of course.
Mm-hmm.
How could I forget? Yeah, he's going to be big for that room this year. I kid. But yeah, I mean, obviously he's the leader. When you look past him, I feel like that would be my question mark is there competition if Nico goes down? Of course, Gaston Morris, the guy's been here forever, is the walk-on. But Jake Merklinger, highly touted freshman coming in. So is there going to be competition there for the backups, for a starter spot if Nico were to go down? See how that would shake out. But yeah, I feel like the room isn't, I mean, when you have a player with as much upside as Nico, I feel like you have to say the room is pretty dang good because of what Nico can bring to the table. But I don't feel like it's the deepest in the world just because of, Gaston Moore not being, a prospect or anything like that, and Merklinger being young. Dameron's a walk-on as well. So I would have a pretty big question mark if Nico were to go down. Whereas last year, of course, if Joe would have gone down, you'd feel comfortable. And even with Hendon in 22, if he would have gone down, at least Milton had experience. So it's a little bit different this year. But with what Nico can bring to the table, I feel like this should be a much better room than last year, just because Nico's going to be much better than Joe Milton was last year.
Well, it's also you don't have the looming presence of Nico behind Joe. Where last year, one of the awkward things is the Texas A&M game and what that was, and the week that followed, and just the quarterback controversy of like who should play, when is the right time to use Nico, when do you go to Nico. This year it's settled. Like there's no question about who is quarterback 1 and whose team this is going into this season. Ethan, I just look at it. One of the things I think is funny, and I know you're a Bears guy, so a good quarterback play is not something that you've become used to as a sports fan, NFL fan in general. But I don't seem to remember any Colts fans over the years being like the prime years of Peyton Manning being like, damn it, do we really have Jim Sorgi as our backup quarterback again? That's not a thing. NFL fans have dealt with this forever. It's like if you have a franchise quarterback, you don't care. Like you don't think about the guy behind you. You don't think about Matt Castle. You don't think about Brian Hoyer. You don't think about Matt Schaub in Atlanta behind Matt Ryan. Like it's fine. The people who are so tied up, like college football just caught up to what the NFL experience has been forever, which is, hey man, if we got a great franchise quarterback and he goes down, season's over. Like that's just how this is going. Like guess what? Like it's over. Like you just, there's this we got to have the deepest quarterback room. Nobody cares in the NFL about having the deepest quarterback room. No one cares who the backup, off the top of y'all's head, who is the current backup quarterback for Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City? Do y'all know?
Carson Wentz.
Is that
Carson
okay?
Wentz.
Ryan, is that your guess?
No, yeah, because I trust Jack to be right.
Yeah, I didn't know. I will trust Jack as well.
Carson Wentz. How many average NFL fans, how many Chiefs fans even know that? How many would still say Blaine Gabbert, possibly? Like, it doesn't matter, because if Patrick Mahomes goes down, it's over. If Nico, so I just think the Tennessee fans, and I wrote about this a few weeks ago, who are so concerned about the quarterback room depth, y'all, if Nico is really good, it doesn't matter. Like, the quarterback depth does not matter behind him for the next 2 years. But also, if something, God forbid, happens to Nico, the season's over anyway. Like the whatever college football playoff aspirations you had, whatever kind of big time, like it doesn't matter if you have a little bit more depth. If Casey Thompson had come on to Tennessee to be the backup quarterback, the season's still over in a sense of like what you're trying to accomplish. Like Nico is a ceiling setter. He is someone that is the number 1 quarterback in his class. He has all the talent in the world. He could be a Heisman type quarterback. It's not how it works. You don't get 2 franchise quarterbacks in the quarterback room. This is not how it works for most programs. It's just silly to me.
Not every program can just have Spencer Sanders come be the backup and never have stuff. Y'all ever think about that? About how he was a complete guy at Oklahoma State and then transfers to Ole Miss to back up Jackson Dart in his last year of collegiate eligibility. It is
one of the strangest transfer decisions in recent memory I can remember.
Yeah.
I thought that was weird when he did it. I mean, Dart was in a good situation. He had good wide receivers coming in. He and Kiffin have a great relationship. Yep. That seemed weird from the start to me.
Auburn was sitting right there. Like, I always thought he was going to go to Auburn. I was like, Auburn made the most sense. Like, he would have been QB1 at Auburn, and he fit kind of what Hugh wants to do anyway. I didn't understand why. Yeah, that was weird. And now it's over.
Yeah, and he was like week 6-7 of 2022. I mean, he was in that Heisman discussion.
He almost played in a college football playoff game. He was almost a starting quarterback. Yeah. Remember, Oklahoma State lost in the last play to Baylor in the Big 12 title game. Like, Spencer Sanders was a dude that previous year. Yeah. Now you got Alan Bowman in year 19 of college football suiting up for the Cowboys again.
Hey, OK State turns most starters in college football. Watch out for the Pokes.
As for the Bears, as for the Bears comment, Chase, the only way I could possibly give any nuance or expertise to this conversation as a fan of the Chicago Bears, watching their quarterback play over the last couple of years, I mean, you got to look. Gaston Moore, if he's the guy, which I would assume he'd be the second dude, I agree 100% with your take that, I mean, it doesn't matter anyway. Like, if Gaston Moore's Tennessee's quarterback, they're not doing anything nice. I mean, if they get in the 12-team playoff, it doesn't matter. Like, Gaston Moore's the guy. But he can be like...
It's like Florida State last year when Jordan Travis went down. It was like... the season was over. Like, you're not winning the college football playoff when Jordan Travis went down. Like, it sucked, but that was it. Like, Jordan Travis was a Heisman type guy. Like, he was really, really good for Florida State last year. It just changes the guy. It doesn't mean it's gonna be a disaster. Like, I think Gaston Moore's competent. I think Gaston Moore would be fine. Like, I think you can still win a lot of games with Gaston Moore, but I don't think that when I say the season's over, what I'm saying is like, their aspirations, what is real and what is attainable, is over if things go awry for Nico. So like that, and that's how it is for most of these programs. If Georgia loses Carson Beck, their aspirations greatly change. Like, unless you really, really are the all-time Gunnar Stockton believer, like, no, Carson Beck might be the number one overall pick in the draft. There is going to be a drop-off if Carson Beck's not available. There's going to be a drop-off for a lot of these quarterbacks around the country. The big time quarterbacks, if they go down, if Cam Moore goes down for Miami, if like you can just go up and down the list for a lot of different. We saw Connor Wegman. Like, what happens at A&M? The bottom probably falls out if Wegman doesn't stay healthy this year for Texas A&M. So that's just how it is for most of even the big time programs around the country. I think to Jack's point, where not everyone just has Spencer Sanders or what Georgia had previously with Stetson Bennett and Carson Beck and Gunnar Stockton and Brock Vandergrift. Like, that's a rarity. That's just. It's not reality for everybody else. So it's just, hey, the NFL, Texas, this is how it's always been.
Even Texas, most arches transfer out.
Yeah, that's not to say that I don't think Gaston Moore couldn't win any games. I was going to make the connection to Chase Daniel with the Bears. Like, I mean, he comes in, he wins one boring game, and he, like, I don't know, the Bears season is already over at that point. It's week 13, and I, just want next season to show up.
Yeah, we're like Patriots fans in the Matt Castle year. They went 11-5. Like, Gaston Moore, I think, could still win. Like, this thing would, I think, would still hum. Like, Gaston Moore, Jake Merklinger, I think they would still be able to get to like 8-9, whatever it is, depending on when something like that would happen. But like, it's just different. Like, no one thought the Patriots were winning a national or winning a Super Bowl with Matt Castle that year. Like, they could win the AFC East. You're still not picking the Patriots to win it all. Like, that's just how it's going to be with Nico. I don't know. That's just how it is.
Examples there's countless examples. Outside of the 22 49ers, there's countless examples.
Right? It's another good one. Final thing here. Vol Hoops. Ethan, this is your moment after having to sit back and watch us talk about Tennessee baseball for the first 20 minutes here. This is your moment. The JP Estrella fan club leader. Year one analysis, Ethan Stone, from what you saw from JP going into year two. What worked for him last year? What didn't? And what's one thing you would like to see him get better at going into his second season under Rick Barnes on Rocky Top?
Yeah, what I liked, I mean, he didn't play a single game, I think, except for one more than, I think maybe Norfolk State he played a little more than 10 minutes, but he didn't play more than 15 minutes all year. So, I mean, it's obviously tough for him to get in the groove. He's behind 80 the entire time. I liked his relationship with with Zakai as the season grew along. You could tell he became a bit of a lob threat. He was figuring some post moves out. I mean, obviously, just as a freshman, it was impressive to see him going out there and looking competent against teams with a pulse. I believe he had 7 points against Florida. He played respectably well against Zach Edey, probably the best of the three big men in the tournament. I mean, he outplayed Jonas Adu in the second half. He gave Tennessee a chance. Obviously Edey still got his, but it was still impressive to see him be able to do that with Adu obviously into foul trouble. What I'd like to see more going into this year, obviously you got Felix coming in out of Ohio State, and he's just a more athletic version of Jonas Adu, slightly more efficient at the rim. Doesn't quite have the shot outside the rim that Adu has, but that never really developed the way it was supposed to anyway. Can't shoot the three, but he's an excellent defender. So I'd like to see Estrella come in, learn just like 10 feet away from the basket, some offense that can help, because I don't know where Tennessee's going to get that from a big man. I don't know who's going to be able to develop points if it's not Estrella, because I mean, as good as Okpara was at Ohio State, and obviously he doesn't have Zakai Ziegler getting him the ball, his ability to develop outside of a lob threat and outside of basic post up, it's exactly what Adu was. It's the exact same problem you have there. So yeah, I'd love to see Estrella develop his offensive game more. I'd love to see him put more, not effort. I think he's putting plenty of effort, but put an emphasis on rebounding as well. I don't think he had a game all season where he had more than 3 rebounds. And I mean, like I just said, he went over 10 minutes of play like once, maybe all season. But yeah, that's what I'd like to see. The offensive game with him, I feel like there is a lot of potential there. I think he's quick. I think he's learning how the offense works. I think he's learning how to work around with Zakai and obviously Gainey and the guys that are going to be able to get him the ball linear. Obviously, is going to be one of those guys, but it'll be fun to watch. I think the battle between him and Felix is going to be more so than people are thinking. Well, I think he's going to get a decent amount of minutes, and he's going to be an important piece for the Vols this year. Will he be an impact piece? I don't know. We'll see. That would be great if he could be, but he's going to be playing a lot of minutes.
I still won't roll out him starting. I
don't think that's a crazy take.
I think it's just going to depend on how much Barnes trusts the transfers as starters and high minutes guys out of the gate. Like, I could still just see Barnes leaning on the in-house guys he knows, and easing the transfers in. Some of them are obviously going to start, like that's how this is going to go. But I just don't see DeBar, Okpara, and Igor and Chaz all starting. Like, I don't see Barnes going 4 transfers starting next to Zakai.
Well, I don't think there's anybody that would think that.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. I think it's probably gonna be like 2, and I think even 2 might be the max here. Because I think Jemai's a lock to start. I think Zakai is a lock to start. Chaz is a lock to start.
Yeah.
And then Igor, it seems like will. And then if you're going Igor, Estrella is just a different kind of look. And I don't know, maybe it's for his confidence. You start off kind of like a folky type thing where you just kind of, I don't know, like you build his confidence, and like he finished strong. And I like Estrella a lot. And Okpara, maybe he's not a big minutes guy. We'll see with fouls and everything else. I don't know. Like, I don't know how Okpara is going to fit right away in this Tennessee scheme. I don't know. I just think people who are penciling in Okpara, I'm like, I still like Estrella, and Estrella was a huge get for Barnes 2 years ago. And I don't know. I'm buying a lot of Estrella stock. I would not be surprised if he still gets more start. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Estrella started more games than Okpara next season.
Go ahead and pencil Okpara into the starting lineup. Don't pin him in, but pencil him in. And you're looking at it, with all due respect, you're looking at it from the completely wrong perspective here. You're looking at it from he's the newcomer. What you should be looking at it is what Rick Barnes values, which is defense and rebounding, and he's light years ahead of JP Estrella, those two things. Yeah. And for Tennessee, with a lot new offensive pieces, all these transfers besides him are offensive pieces, and you have questions about the defense. Yeah. The glue that's going to keep Tennessee in the top 5 defensively, which Rick Barnes is pivoting some, that's still going to be key, is Zakai Ziegler at the 1, Jemai Meshack at the 3, and Felix Okpara at the 5. Now, could minutes look pretty balanced between those guys, and could some nights JP Estrella be the guy in closing time? Absolutely. Wouldn't surprise me at all. But I just think when you talk about what Rick Barnes values, and the fact that Felix Okpara played 22 minutes a year or 22 minutes a game last year on a Big Ten team as a starter. Not a great Big Ten team, albeit. Team that's coach got fired in the middle of January, but a Big Ten team. And JP Estrella, as Ethan said, played 10 minutes more than once last year. So is JP Estrella going to be a big part of this team? Yes. Is he talented? Yes. Could he end up playing closing time minutes? Absolutely. I just think when you talk about going into the season, to me, it would be a surprise if Felix Okpara is not starting 5 for Tennessee.
There's certainly a lot to learn. I mean, Estrella had his flashes. He played well against Edie. He played well against Florida. I mean, but like we need more reps from the guy. I would agree with Ryan. I said a little second ago that it wasn't a crazy take. I think Ryan laid it out perfectly. He's already switched me over. I feel like it has to be Felix for that reason alone.
And I think that's almost the curious part, going back to your original question, Chase, of like, where do you want to see him grow? Because I think if you want him to be able to be a starter or be a guy that can play closing minutes, it's very clearly he's got to get a lot better defensively on the boards. He was just not very good in either of those areas last year. And the limited minutes he played, the block rate was like 2%. The offense and defensive rebound rates, 8%. I mean, in comparison, I don't even think Jonas They was a great rebounder, and he was 12.5 and 19.5 at those two spots. So he's got to get a lot better there. Now, what I really like about what Tennessee did here is I think those two guys' games complement each other really well, because I think JP Estrella is a much better offensive player and is a guy that you could very easily be a dude Tennessee can throw the ball down to in the paint and can get in buckets with relative consistent rate. So I think that's almost kind of the curious question. If you're looking for him to be the perfect complement to Okpara, and you think Okpara could be the true starter, and you're looking for a big man off the bench that can give you a big spark offensively, let's go and fine-tune that offensive game. I think Ethan's point about a guy that can hit a shot from 10 feet is really important, because Okpara has not shown his ability to do that. But if you're looking for a guy that could potentially play 25 minutes a game and really be a guy you lean super, super heavily on as playing co-starter minutes or maybe starter minutes, I think it's got to be him improving defensively and on the glass.
I like it. Jack Foster, what can the good folks check out from you and the team over at Omaha Productions this week?
Can I say something real fast before I answer that question?
Yeah.
I think it's been maybe over a dozen times in this 62-minute podcast so far, Ryan has made this face while you're talking. At least 10, maybe
Wait,
like 15. Yes,
me?
While you're talking, Ryan makes this.
I made it once to Ethan Stone. I made it once to Ethan when he said something about the Bears' backup quarterback situation, and I didn't get the opportunity, but I was going to make the joke about how I was in Soldier Field last year when Tyson Bagent won a game. So
it was electric.
The Bears can win with some bad quarterbacks.
Deontay Foreman legacy game.
I thought Tyson was the truth. I know exactly the game you're talking about. I thought he was the truth, dude.
Panthers, right?
He was doing crazy stuff, and I was like, this kid, he's got it. And then the next game, he was terrible.
It was basically was it Will McBride? Is that the kid's name that started at quarterback in 2017, a couple games for Tennessee? Is that the kid I'm thinking about?
What year?
2017, Butch's last year. He threw that touchdown pass. He stood in the pocket on like a fourth down and threw a beautiful touchdown ball to cut the deficit to like 21-17 at Missouri, and Tennessee lost that game like 56-17. Got just the door blown off. Yeah, but at the time, it like kind of made the game relatively close, like late in the first half. And there were so many Tennessee fans he was like an undersized white kid, real small recruit, and there were a ton of Tennessee fans like, this kid's got moxie. I like him. That was Ethan with Tyson Bagent after his one good game last year.
Hey, Tyson Bagent was better than Justin Fields, so
honestly,
nothing will ever top the moxie belief in Harrison Bailey. There's still Tennessee fans right now that are like, Harrison just didn't get a shot, man. Like Harrison is the prince who was promised. Like, I'll never forget the fans screaming during the Pitt game for I guess almost 4 years ago or 3 years ago now. Just Harrison, where's Harrison? Like fans losing their minds around me for Harrison Bailey. Like Harrison Bailey is an all-time legendary Tennessee quarterback for so many fans.
He might have had to have one of the worst careers of a 5-star quarterback ever. He's a walk-on at Louisville. He was the backup quarterback at UNLV going into a team that won like one game the year before. And he was a 5-star. All due respect to Harrison Bailey, I'm sure he's a good guy. If you're listening, man, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. That was mean, but just an observation I had.
It's not even mean. It's just real. Like, that's just facts. Like, you're just pointing out his timeline. That's the college football timeline of Harrison Bailey. Like, that's just it. Goodness gracious. But Harrison Bailey, an all-timer.
Yeah.
I was a Brian Maurer dude. Like, you cannot tell me Brian
we were
Maurer's
Brian
not a
Maurer
dude.
dudes.
Yeah.
Brian Maurer forever.
I would have been
The
a
first
Brian
time I was
Maurer
on
dude.
this podcast was me and Chase bonding over being Brian Maurer guys, like in
Yeah.
entering the 2019 season or 2020
Chaos.
season.
Like, we were all about it. Like, Brian Maurer was just everything I want in a college quarterback. The man feared nothing. He was fully capable of diving anywhere, throwing the ball wherever he wanted to go. He had some Stetson Jet to him. There was some Stetson Bennett to Brian Maurer, many are saying.
Apparently, Brian Maurer was a menace at T-Rex playing basketball. Like,
I could see that.
He was not very good, and he would get cooked, and he'd get so mad.
Oh, I thought you were saying he actually was good. That was the opposite of what you were saying there.
Like a menace as in, like, throwing fits.
Okay.
He quit the team in fall camp of 21 because, like, you know, they go into it like it's going to be a 4-person battle for the starting job, and he was like the first one to get cut. They told him like quickly he wasn't going to start. He quits the team, but he goes to Tennessee that whole semester. I had a class with him. That was my senior year, and he played intramural football, and I think on just a random team, and he threw an interception. There is somewhere out there is a Kappa Sig that picked off Brian Maurer in Tennessee intramural football when he was still on a football scholarship, I'm sure, for the rest of that semester.
Some psychology major. Just some guy.
He tried to thread the needle over the middle, and he jumped in front of it.
You know, it's funny, and I
lurking.
will end it here. When I played intramural football, flag football back in undergrad at North Georgia, there was a kid who, there must just be something about me, but I ran an out route, and like I could feast in some flag football. Like me at the peak of my, like, just we're going full on Wes Welker here. Like there's just I know my role, and that's what's happening. I'm devastated.
You look like Jordy Nelson though.
Not at the time. Not at the time.
I'm saying, like, you're.
He's bald.
Be a little bit more direct, Jack. What are you? Huh?
If I speak, I'm in big trouble. Never mind.
I don't. Okay, I just didn't know where you're going with that, Jack. I don't know.
I think you do, but we'll stop it there. Ryan said,
"What a program! What a program!" But anyway, long story short, he like the guy just like completely forgets we're playing flag football and full on picks me up off the ground, like full on wrap up, and drives me into the ground. And when you talk about like you ever just pick up a cup that's full and you thought was empty and you're like, whoa, it just completely catches you off guard. That's what it was like getting tackled in a flag football game, where you're like, that's not on my radar. I never thought that was something that I had to think about at 3:00 in the afternoon in between classes. But that is something I had to think about in this dirt field. And he slammed me, and he like immediately apologized. He's like, I'm so sorry. I played football in high school, and my instincts took over there and saw you over the middle and just was not letting that happen. And I was like, it's okay. Just a little jarring. Like, it's fine. Like, I'm all right.
Ribs are cracked, but we're good.
Oof. Goodness gracious. Flag football, though, intramural back in the day, it's a good time. Flag football is a fun time. Anyway, long story short, Jack Foster, Omaha Productions, what do you have for the good folks this week?
Yeah, SV Pod. Be sure and check that podcast out. Still, it's not new. Pod's been around a while, but recently revamped here in the past couple of months. Scott Van Pelt, Stanford Steve, talking all things NFL preseason, the Open, SVP winning par 3 tournaments. They're a riot, and it's a blast every Monday evening that pod comes out. And then with Always College Football with Greg McElroy, you know the drill, college football talk leading up to the season. Then the Mina Kimes show, all NFL XO and preseason stuff heading into the season. So it's almost the best time of year. NFL and college, when that merges first week of September, it's the best thing ever.
Not for some people on this podcast. Ryan Schumpert of Rocky Top Insider, who is not excited for football time in Tennessee once again. Ryan Schumpert, what can the good folks check out from you and the team over at RockyTopInsider.com this week?
The haters and losers, also known as Chaser Distraught, but it's basically full pivot to call it Tennessee football. Drafts in the rear view. Once we get everything finalized with all these draft decisions, we'll have a complete recap there. But today I wrote about 5 guys that I think could end up being on the All-SEC teams by the end of the year for Tennessee. Obviously, they only had 2. If Tennessee has a season that we think they will, they're going to have more than 2 on the postseason team or the end of the year team. So we looked at some guys there. I'll have a complete ranking on the most important games of the schedule at some point, potential breakout players, most important players, kind of a lot of stuff like that here in the next week as we get fully tuned up for fall camp starting.
I love it. Ethan Stone, what about you over at Saturday Down South and everywhere else this week?
Yeah, a lot of the same stuff. We're getting ready to pivot to football using that angle now. We got previews coming up for different teams. Obviously, SDS and Saturday Tradition, the Big Ten, obviously going to be ramping up this year, as well as the SEC with the addition of Texas, Oklahoma. We'll have full coverage over there. I'm working on some pages for evergreen stuff during the season. I'll be helping out Saturdays and Sunday on the news desk, so be sure to look out for that.
I love it. Ryan Schumpert, Ethan Stone, Jack Foster, always a pleasure, and I'll talk to y'all next week.
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.